the furnace might be done before it ever started. Okay, we're back, and the little pump's where we left it. We have new filter versus old super grungy filter. We have a whole box of parts and instructions. So theoretically we should be able to do something. So I'm gonna follow the metering pump directions and modify the little pump and put together some pieces, parts. Looks like that's the housing that this little pump, motor will hook to and connect to Mr. Pump. We'll get stuff done. Through changing some little setting. For now, supposedly, I can push CW and the motor, motor rotates. That's why that is funny. So I was wondering what this was. I'm pretty sure it's the most hokey way ever of holding that CW down. Curious. Top number is number of speeds. Wouldn't you think CW would move clockwise? I guess from the motor's perspective, maybe it's turning clockwise. So where does it go before it blows up? Yeah, I don't have any idea what speed we're going to be doing. But that is indeed very, very adjustable. Alright, anyway, that's kind of cool. But I think this is done, so pump will mount there, and we'll keep turning pages and fix the pump. And we'll turn this off. That. I guess maybe they couldn't find one that actually had an on-off switch versus that, but it'll be fine. Okay, I have Mr. Pump more or less done. Inlet is currently, this guy flared. We don't know if that's how it's gonna stay, because we don't know how the inlet oil is gonna come into the pump. The only question currently, is the outlet that has to go to that little solenoid, which I think that's 1/4 inch NPT, and that's 1/8 inch. I honestly don't know. It's those two sizes, that's all I know. And this little guy is neither. I don't know what magic thing those are. It's kind of like a banjo bolt that has a flat sealing washer, but I have no idea what those threads are called. All I know is they're not pipe thread. And it has this tiny little outlet. So I think if I get a pipe, little short pipe, I might have one up in the bird poop shop, that goes from this size to this size, and then I can leave that little guy in there. The biggest question, the instructions show cutting off that guy and drilling it out, and I'm assuming that's to keep, because this is sucking oil now, so doesn't say anything about if I have this type of fitting, but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna snip that off just past the threads there, and it looks like it should be relatively bigger, because that doesn't go in there and seal on anything. It used to go push against this little guy and do some sort of magic regulating things there, but it doesn't do that anymore. Okay, new dude has quite the bigger hole in him now. I went with a bit that was a touch bigger than that hole, whatever that little guy is, so that this is not more restrictive than that will be. Not that I'm using a 90. Here is the little brass pipe. Will probably be more restrictive than that guy. So I don't know why I was him-hawing around about doing that. That makes me happy. So all I need to do is get a close, like I said, maybe 1/8 inch nipple, whatever that is. And we'll put him back on here with a close nipple to this with a bushing to that. Oh, the other fun part. In the instructions, it says the solenoid's directional, the notch side is the inlet. The body is also printed with the direction. Printed with direction. I see a whole bunch of words, but that can be put on any direction. There's a tiny little thing. Again, I don't think that matters. Anyway, I see no notch nor direction. So what I went with is, you'd think you'd enter in the side that has the little hole in the center, and maybe outlets that top hole, but I have absolutely no idea. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens when I run it that way. And worst case, take it all apart and turn it around backwards. So, all I'm missing is that little guy to that little guy, a close nipple, and then pump gets put on here, and that will be attached to him. And we should be able to test that out. I mean, not really anything to test until we get oil to suck on or diesel or some such. So, onto the burner. Well, the fire is out and on the operating table. But the furnace might be done before it ever started. That looks as though it's pretty well dorked before we even start here. So I'm gonna pull those bolts and see what part of that comes out and what we can do. Because worst case, I'm thinking we can turn that into firing into a wood stove or something else. Obviously not the most intelligent thing to do, no doubt, but if it will capture some heat and extract it and put it in the shop, that would be good. So I'll pull that off real quick just so we can take a peek at what's in there. That probably explains why this thing's so light. I thought they were all kind of cast iron, but clearly that's not the case. That's some sort of, probably not asbestos, but some magical heat absorbing material. So anyway, we'll take a look inside real quick. Alrighty, so there's the piece we were looking at, well, one of the two, and this is the broken off piece. Mystery thingamajig that handles all the super high heat. Looks like it's supposed to stick on something like that. So that probably, well, theoretically, is what's supposed to take all all the heat and flame. And then it looks like, yeah, this is super lightweight little tin. Looking at the Bernie on the sides, and I guess, yeah, it might have been doing the right thing. So it would have Bernie on the sides, and then Bernie on the bottom, and the solid on the top. So it may have just gotten broken from getting pulled out and banging around moving. That's kind of a bummer. But so in other words, when it was last run, it might not have been broke, because one would assume there would be flame looking parts, which I would guess would be rusted like that everywhere. Equally though, the fact that that far side's got flame, maybe it was broke beforehand. Who knows? Not I. Alrighty, so no bueno. We can just wrap tape around it and use it, right? Well, I'm probably gonna play with the burner, meaning see if I can get it converted to use oil. And like I said, worst case, I have I think a couple old wood stoves that cut hole inside, stick his little nose in there, and he could blow heat in onto some fire bricks that should be able to take it and heat the stove up and put off some heat. But I will see if the boy happens to have mystery soft heat absorbing stuff available. It's hard talking about things when you have no idea what you're talking about. That big weird thing. See if there's one of those floating around. Or a furnace that's like big old school cast iron that is just sandproof. Nozzle, burner, dealy jobber, close to set up. Where'd the old burn tube go? New burn tube, super long. Oh, old burn tube, super short. I wondered about halfway through looking at this how this is ever gonna work. So I'm gonna have to look and see if they make longer electrodes, or I might be just drinky-dinking something to extend these little guys that thread on the end of the electrodes. I'll do a little bit of research and see how it's supposed to work, but they need to get clear back to roughly where my finger's at in order for those Springema things to come down and pass power to them to make sparks to light fuel that shoots out of that. So I'll do some snooping before I get too far here, but I think I'm finally getting close to the end of this. And that little thing, wire jobbies, is preheater to heat the block up to make oil flow and work more better. And their instructions are entertaining. Mostly, it might be not completely my fault, but some portion of my fault, because I bought like the full kit thinking I didn't want to monkey around with this too long. And yeah, it's ending up longer than I would have thought. Anyway, so they sent all new parts rather than modifying a whole bunch of old parts. So I started down the modifying path and realized I didn't need to. And, oh, I bet I need to put the sensor in here somewhere. That'll be curious where that goes. Maybe it doesn't go in there. I thought it was the head that it wanted to keep track of the temperature of. Yeah, we'll see. But first, nothing's gonna work if we can't get spark to those guys, of which that little dude makes, and we're a fair amount short. So, off to reading, research, maybe text the boy, see if he knows offhand. But that's all I know for now, and that might be as far as we get today, depending on what I find. If there's some little Ace Hardware or something that happens to have new ones of those, if maybe by some strange chance they're known to go out, I don't know, I'm just making stuff up. So we will see. I'll let you know what we find. So quick little update. Turns out, brake line fits just inside those little dealies and is, well, I only have one hand, is pretty stout if you've ever played with brake line. I mean, that's moving because there's a giant coil of it, but for a short distance, it's quite stout. So I'm pretty certain that will be just fine. Or if not, we'll find out. But we'll continue on now. And I found I had a little nipple for mounting the solenoid to the pump, so that will be finished as well. I've got everything all ready. I've got a handy dandy power cord that has a switch on it, and all of this stuff wired up, all the pieces inside wired up. I believe everything should be run off of this little guy, so hopefully we should see no smoke, not trip little breaker guy that runs this cord, and that should light up, but we shouldn't get spark or fan, I believe. So I'll turn this on, excuse me, and see what we get. A little bit less than exciting. I don't know if there's a power button on that guy. I'm guessing probably not. Well, time to troubleshoot wiring, evidently. That's crazy. I didn't think it was that complicated to hook up. Hot comes into the digital controller. Neutral, so 1 and 2. I see where my wiring failed. I thought I must have goofed up on the hots, but all my hots are good. The relay, solid state relay is powered, and number 1 on this guy's powered. I was looking at his little diagram, and it says number 2 is supposed to have the other side of the AC. And you'll notice, if you can see down there, there's only 1 wire going there. I was like, well, what in the world goes to 2? And if you didn't look really close, boy, it shows up good on camera. Anyway, I missed that number 2 goes to neutral. So I will grab another little wire and pull Mr. Controller out and put neutral to number 2, which is down there. I'll probably check my wiring again real quick, but I was very careful putting it together, so I'd be confused if I missed that. Oh, how funny. Yeah, that wire that I pulled out of the bag that they sent with the kit, it's missing. Okay. Okay. I've got my audience ready for try number 2. Controller should boot, power on, however you want to word it, and nothing else should happen. Ooh, that's awesome. So in theory, it's supposed to be trying to warm up the block in there to that 180 degrees, and then it would kick the burner on, of which won't do much other than make sparks at the end and make fan noises. So we'll probably, since it seems to be heating up pretty quick, we'll probably wait and see if we can watch it do that. I'm gonna turn that away from the oil can, even though, like I said, it shouldn't do anything. It's always fun watching the refresh on a phone versus in person. You don't see it regrowing. If that's going so quick, we'll come watch at this end for Sparky Sparks. So that seems legit. I wish I had air hose hooked up to that to see if it blew more air out, but we can check on that later. So really, we are to where we could test if we put a fuel line between that and here and hook the air hose there. And it's not supposed to be burned with diesel, but I don't think it would necessarily hurt anything. So maybe get it primed with diesel. So maybe we'll do that real quick just to see, because it'd be cool to see, make sure, excuse me, that it makes flame type stuffs. And then it'd be kind of fun to try it with used oil. I just don't know that I want to necessarily do that until I have pretty clean filtered oil. Like, I'd like to be able to run it through its old filter. So we'll probably pull that apart, see if we can find a filter element or something that goes to that, and figure out even some sort of temporary setup. So all those words to say, I'm gonna figure out what I want to do for oil connection, and I'll be back once I do that. So I got my little test tray set up here and thought it would take a minute to prime, but it took maybe 15 seconds and it started making gurgling noises and started running oil all over itself, so I didn't catch any of that. But pump works super slick, so I'm gonna get fittings for the end of the solenoid that will fit up to, oh, I guess I can just say the same size copper as that guy to run in the bottom where the oil goes, and we'll be able to test fire because I got air that I can hook there. And then once we test fire it, we'll know whether we should cut a hole in the side of super old wood stove and see what we get or what we should do. But that's the plan. So I went and got my little compression adapters for both ends of that. As you can see, it's sitting there with a little pressure behind it, which is kind of odd. I think because the solenoid kicks off before it has time to bleed through the tiny little hole in the solenoid, it keeps some pressure in there, which, I don't know, maybe that's good that it's not leaking out anywhere. But I bled oil up to here, and that's all I've done. Hooked the pump to the plug there that's controlled by this guy. Really, it's controlled by this, but that controls that. Have that mostly plugged in. We're gonna turn that guy on. Oh, and I've got air. Supposed to need around 14 PSI for metering pump to best atomize is what they say. So we're gonna turn my little switch down there on. That guy should want to heat up before it turns the pump or the air solenoid on. And then it'll take a minute to bleed oil out of the nozzle, so it'll be curious if it lights the first time or not. And since I fully expect to, there's a chance that we'll just sling oil everywhere, I'm hoping to shoot most of it that direction and not on my pretty white door or the rest of the floor. I might get some on the floor, but what do you do? I got cat litter. Okay, so that's on. It's working just as it did before, which is always a plus that it's not worse or different or something. And off she goes, heating up. If it's like last time, it should heat up pretty quick, and then I'll have a little bit of time to adjust that solenoid. You gotta keep an eye on pressure here, because I have no idea what speed that needs to turn at. I can't remember how many PSI pump pressure I'm supposed to have. Well, let's check the pressure. And 14 on the gallon. So far we don't have to worry about oil pressure. Nice. Oh, I don't know if you saw the little squirt of oil there. So safety timed out, which theoretically is probably good. Oh, I wish I'd have seen what that was running at. I got excited by it trying the light thing. So, come on little guy. I'm pretty sure those are heat activated. The boy can tell me. And it has to cool off for it to reset. There is the part where I'm just making stuff up because I don't know. So I push the reset. Push the reset button just to see if it's ready to go. And I kind of forgot the part where it's going to kick on and go. So now, I'm to the part where I don't know how much pressure, so I'll just kind of keep it around there for now. Squirt. Alright, that's all. I'm gonna do some reading and see if it's expected to burn better or not. And that's all I know. Throw some cat litter stuff on my little mess.